Hello and welcome back to the wonderful world of shatranj, an ancient Persian chess variant. Before we begin, the key phrase here is chess variant. That means the rules are slightly different, so I don't want to see any more comments from you cheeky scamps about how the pieces are in illegal positions and are moving them wrong and all this kind of business. I'll take you through the two main rule differences for our purposes today. The first is that there are no bishops because the penalty for apostasy in the Muslim world is quite harsh. Instead you have the elephant, which leaps 2 squares in a diagonal direction. They can move backwards as well. The second difference is that there are no queens because drag hadn't been invented yet. Instead you have, that may or may not be true, instead you have the furs, which moves 1 square in a diagonal direction, and it can also go backwards. So having said all of that, let's get up the manuscript we're looking at today. Very nice. This was a game allegedly played between 2 characters, An-Nasrani as blue and Hisham as red. Let's get the position on the board. Now Hisham, playing as red, is actually in a lot of trouble here. The documentation that comes down to us says it's mate in 43 moves. That is individual moves rather than pairs of moves as we transcribe today. So An-Nasrani starts with the pawn check here, and you can see that the king only has 1 square to escape to, so there he goes. And now the knight here captures the elephant, it's check again. Again, the king only has 1 square to move to. We have once more a pawn check. Again, the king has 1 square to go to, and now the knight captures the other elephant over here. This time the king has a choice of moves to take. What if he captures the pawn here? Well, that's not going to be so great for him because it's checkmate very quickly. This is check, and now the king has 1 square. The rook comes across, and the king captures the knight here, and we have checkmate from the pawn. There's no squares for the red king to move to. This is covered by the knight, and all of these are covered by the rook. So let's just go back to where he had that choice. He's not going to capture the pawn here, he's going to have to go the other way into this gap. But the rook is coming across to d1 as before, giving a check. The king has 2 choices. If he takes the pawn, you're getting checkmated by the knight. The rooks are covering the verticals and horizontals here, and this knight's covering the retreats. So he cannot capture the pawn, but he can capture the knight. But in this case, An-Nasrani is going to check with the pawn. The king now has 1 square to go to, and it's check again from this knight. He's getting shoved around like nobody's business. That's no way to treat royalty. This is check again, covered by the knight, and the king has to come down now. And now this pawn is pushed, and the king has nowhere to move to. Everything's covered by pawns here, and this square is covered by the knight. However, you can capture with the red knight here. It's the only way out, so let's try this. The pawn captures back, and it's check once more. You can capture here, coming down in front of the pawns. But now the knight's going to check on d5, and the king has multiple choices that we'll have to go through here. But not really, because most of these moves just transition back to the main line. King to a4 is not part of the main line though, and that just gives a very fast checkmate. The rook comes to b3. Although red's not in check, any move that he does, for example moving the king upwards or just some random furs move, then the bottom rook's coming across for the quick mate. So let's just go back to the main line here. The main line is king to a5. In that case, we're having rook to a3 with check, and the king is going to sweep across these pawns here. Rook to b3 again, and we have the king captures c5. He can't go left, of course, because the bottom rook's coming across for the mate. So the king captures the pawn, and then we have rook to c3 with check, and the king is going to try to escape. Again, you can't go left because you'll just get rolled into the corner. He's going up to d6. And now, sneaky An-Nasrani moves his knight up to e7. What's he doing? Well, the king can't capture it because it's nicely protected by the elephant, and he's also revealed the check from the rook. No red pieces can be interposed between the king and the rook, so the king has 1 move. He comes down to here. And now the knight checks again. Once more, the king has a single move. That's to capture this pawn, and now rook to c4. Again, the king has to capture the pawn, and the other rook comes up to give a check. Again, the king has 1 move. The rook's protecting the retreat here. So he goes up, and the knight comes down. Again, a single move only available for the king. There's a check, and the king has to be pushed up into the edge of the board. The retreat's cut off by the knight, and yeah, well, that's it. He comes up, and now we have rook to e7 with check, again protected by the elephant. And again, the king has a single square to move to, and can you see the final move? I'm sure you can. It is knight giving the checkmate here. The king has nowhere to move. Again, the rook's covering the horizontals and the verticals, and the knight's giving the checkmate. So that was fantastic. Mate in 43 from An-Nasrani. Have to feel a little bit sorry for Hisham getting pushed around so much there. However, there is a modern twist to this story. In the making of this video, I have discovered that there's actually a force mate in 25. So we need to go back to move number 22. Ooh, I've gone a bit far there. Let's go forward again. In this position, when the king moves back to a5, if you move the rook across to b3, then the king is completely trapped. He's getting mated on the next move. You can move him down, but of course the rook's coming across for the mate. This rook is protected by the king. You could try any other move, such as a last desperate capture, take the elephant, and the rook is still coming across. These squares are covered by the pawns protected by the rook, and the rooks are just crushing this red king. So that's it. Well done, An-Nasrani. Very interesting position, and I'll see you again next time.